Welcome to What the Duck, a podcast with real experts talking about direct spin challenges and experiences. And now, here's your host, SourceDay's very own manufacturing maven, Sarah Scudder.
Thank you for joining me for What the Duck, another supply chain podcast brought to you by SourceDay. I'm your host, Sarah Scudder, and this is a podcast for people working in the direct materials part of supply chain. I'm at Sarah Scudder on LinkedIn and at S Scudder on Twitter. If you are new to the show, make sure to follow this podcast so you don't miss any of our direct materials supply chain content. Today, I'm going to be joined by Curtis Strzinek, and we're going to discuss how to deal with supply surprises. If you work for a manufacturer and are struggling to know if and when your parts and materials are going to arrive, then this episode is for you. Curtis has sold and bought many different industrial commodities throughout his 30-plus year career. And I want to say Curtis and I have been LinkedIn friends for, 3 or 4 years now. So welcome to the show, Curtis.
Hi, Sarah.
So when we were prepping for the show, you gave me a little tour of your office. And I have to say, a little crazy for me. I have a table and a laptop, and that is all that's in my office. And I feel like with your long career in supply chain, you have things and collections everywhere in your office for all different things related to supply chain.
Do you want, tell me when you want me to answer? You keep going.
Oh no, we're just chatting.
Okay, so next time you're down at Corpus, and we do actually have schedules that can flange up, you'll have to come by my office and just completely be astounded with all the stuff.
Like the actual calendar on your wall, which is kind of a thing that is crazy to me. I live off my calendar on my phone and my computer.
Yes, and I do too. My phone, my laptop, my desk, everything is coordinated. LinkedIn, Outlook, Teams, it's all overlapping. And I have found, I even have a desk pad I didn't show you.
You have what did you say, a desk pad?
Yeah, another calendar on my desk, like that covers.
Oh yeah, those were like a thing I remember when my parents were working. Desk calendars were a thing.
Yes, and obviously, they don't just make these for me, so I get, several hundred of them a year brought to my office, hundreds.
So, Curtis, what's the most important thing that you've learned in your supply chain career?
I think the most important thing that kind of covers all aspects of buying, selling, just, supply chain period, is you can't be surprised. When something good or something bad happens, whether you're negotiating or whether you're following up on orders or confirming orders or expediting, whatever the case may be, or sourcing something, you can't let yourself be surprised. And to elaborate on that a little bit or give you an example, you place an order and you're following up on it because the end user reaches out to you and says, hey, can you check on this? This just became more critical. We want to make sure, and it's usually via email. We want to make sure that there's no issues while we're planning this job. And now with most ERPs, that's all done automatically with the kitting and staging and work order process. And all that's done automatically, through SAP in our case. But if there is something that they want handheld, and you reach out to the supplier and it was ordered 6 weeks ago and it's supposed to be here in a week, and your trusted supplier and confidant and relationship built manufacturer, distributor, whatever the case may be, says, I don't have that order. I can't find that order in my system. And so many people just
freak out
freak out.
And
They
oh my
lose
gosh,
it. What are we going to do? The world's going to end, and you just have to stop and look at, first you said, well, here's a copy of it. Here's an email where your company pinged me back saying that you did get it to our system. And somehow, somewhere in this unbelievably unwritten, untouched, automated world, oh my gosh, something happened and an order got lost. So then you go back to the end user and say, okay, what day is the world going to end? What day is your world going to end? And they say, oh my gosh, we've got this, we've got all these people coming, all these schedules made, and all these people are going to be here Monday morning at 7 a.m. When they show up, if we don't have these parts, it's going to cost us X amount of dollars. So, and this is a Monday, and we could go back to the supplier and say, if I don't get all this on Thursday, that's what you give them to work for. You give yourself that margin. And then you see what they can do, and they come back with, well, we're going to have to be partners in your company to get this here by next Thursday. We're going to have to own part of your company. That's what it's going to cost you. And it goes back and forth. I'm saying you can't just let yourself get freaked out and surprised, because a lot of the guys in the field and a lot of even the suppliers kind of get freaked out. And you just have to take it step by step.
Yeah, it's definitely a certain mindset that I think doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. And it's an important skill to learn and master if you're planning to be a buyer and spend your career in supply chain. Curtis, question for you about why supply chain? Why did you choose to get into this crazy industry?
Well, it kind of chose me. I had I'll be honest, working after college, farming and ranching, the local South Texas oil field, and realizing with a college degree, you're making really good money working out in the oil field, but do you want to be climbing up on rigs for the rest of your life? And so you start looking for things where you've used your experience. And industrial distribution, there was an opportunity that came up, and did that for 10 or 12 years. And that opportunity led into this opportunity. So I went from selling to buying.
So some of my favorite customers in my career have been salespeople. And I think it's because they understand the importance of relationships and working as a team versus the us versus me versus them, or us versus them mentality.
Oh, most definitely. That kind of sarcastic way I use the term partner and vendor relationship was not meant lightly in this case. You have okay, how many ums is that for me? The relationship can't be about profit loss 100% anyway. You have to be able to trust them. You have to be able to understand how their system works. It's important that they understand your needs and how your system works. And what most people at the higher level who are putting contracts in place that trickle down out of all these different locations don't understand. You get what you pay for, to an extent. There's always gray areas.
Mm-hmm. So you had a stint in your career where you were an operations manager.
Yes, and a industrial distributor.
Okay, so why the change from operations manager to buyer?
Double pay. Is that black and white enough?
Short and
Seriously,
sweet.
double the pay.
So you became a buyer, and now you've been a buyer at your company for, I want to say 20 years, which is a really, really long time to be at one company. What was the biggest challenge that you experienced when you started at your company as a buyer?
Oh, wow. That was, that's actually going to be easy. Where I came from on the selling side, you had the owner of the company, and he owned 100% of the company. So there was nobody else to question his decision. So you would go to your manager, ask him a question, and he had full carte blanche to make whatever decision would be necessary. And if he, for some reason, thought, okay, this is above my pay grade, he would go directly to the owner of the company, and the decision would be made before you hung up on the phone. It was done.
Talk about no red tape.
Oh, zero red tape. And so I went from that to somebody asked a question in a meeting, and it said, well, we need to form another team and an ad hoc committee to decide if that really is a question that we need to be addressing. And we need to make sure that this gets all right in departments, and 15 colors of red tape just to see if you can make it through the meeting without somebody going into apoplexy about somebody questioning what's going on. So that was a big change.
Biggest challenge you face today as a buyer 21 years later?
I think it's people. I know I've been doing this forever, but you don't have anyone else or a lot of areas where people stick to a job. You can go through LinkedIn or any other website or Glassdoor or whatever, and you look at somebody's CV or resume, and you'll see 2 years, 1 year, 3 years, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. Oh my gosh, you lasted 5 years somewhere. And I help with the hiring process and going through for different positions with our company. And I see that, and you just can't fathom that people think they learned something in 1 year, or got any experience, or they just jumped down the road as in the oil field and the refining world. The term is they went across the street for an extra nickel an hour. So a lot of times when I see that, I question that. Are you making a step to better yourself and for you, your family, your career, whatever the case may be, or can you not be happy anywhere or successful anywhere? And that's my view. I could prove it to you 1,000 times over, but I don't think I need to.
So I would argue that the role of a buyer has changed most dramatically in the last 2 to 3 years. How is your position evolved as a buyer over the years? So you started out, coming from a very small organization, having a privately run business where your owner could make a decision instantly, to a larger organization. But what really stands out as the evolution of the change in your role as a buyer?
Oh, most definitely it's transaction. Like I was mentioning earlier, our ERP system is automated and I wouldn't say the last 2 or 3 years, Sarah, I'd say the last 10, 12, 15 years. It started when I got here. It was already, how touchless can you make our world and still deem us as necessary? So my job has evolved from being transactional 10, 15 years ago to being more strategic, fixing problems, preventing them from happening to begin with, providing input and training a lot of new buyers. Every day there's questions. And so I'm one of the few people still around that can say, well, here's how you do that. And here's, this is how you handle that situation.
You're like the company historian.
I'm going to go ahead and take that as a compliment instead of a dig at my age. But that's because I like it.
So what's the most important thing you do for your company? If you had to pick one thing.
Keeping all the situations like I was referencing to with all these young buyers from all over the world, seeing something and going, oh my gosh, what do we do? What do we do? Because they don't have the experience. They're going, oh, wait a minute. That's no problem, no issue. We can fix that. Here, let me show you. And that gets handed down to me from as high up as you can get in our group, that I'm appreciated for that.
So when you and I were prepping for our conversation today, the theme that really stood out was your ability to be calm and cool and collect in situations when there's supply surprises. So I want to dive into that a little bit more because I think it's really valuable for our listeners. So you struggle to know if and when your order is going to arrive, even though you have 30 plus years of experience in the industry, you have an ERP, but you don't always know where your supply is and if it's going to arrive on time. Why is that? Why is there so much disconnect from a purchase order being cut to if and when you're actually going to receive supply?
Well, that could have different ways of looking at it. What's the old saying? Garbage in, garbage out. You enter an order, and it comes from somebody's request out in the field, or they're actually, now everything's automated. They're entering it in, and then you're relying on the supplier to provide you with confirmation or acknowledgement of, yes, we received the order. Yes, it's against the contract. The pricing isn't an issue. Here's your delivery. And then you're relying on that person that they keyed it all in correctly and they got it in correctly, or the system's flanged up correctly to go from your ERP to their ERP, which is more nowadays, that's the way it goes. You're reading the different processes, different tools that are out there. So you're still relying on people, because then you go down to the point of what we use in the MRO world, in the maintenance, it's indirect purchasing. This is in Amazon. There's not robots running around a warehouse throwing stuff in a box. These items are technically checked in certain areas, or metallurgy checks. And I mean, it's ad infinitum. I could go on for hours on the different products and the different things that have to be checked before they come through the gate. Well, you have people doing that. And you go back to, who did you hire? How long have they been there? Do they know what they're doing? Did they do it right before it ever showed up? So, and I think there's a lack in experience in some fields. People want to move up, and I get it. Wow, yes, of course. You want to do the best thing for you, your career, your family, your situation, whatever the case may be. But companies are, in the most part, in the industrial distribution and manufacturing world, are owned by another company that's owned by another company that's owned by a holding company that's worried about your bottom line. Done. Bottom line. And when you have 50,000 PO lines a week issued automatically through your system, you're saying that, hey, if we got a 5% fail rate or error rate, hey, we did pretty good. Or you could say that we had 5,000 errors. Depends on how you look at it. And people are willing to weigh. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So what are you personally doing to reduce the number of supply surprises for you and your team?
Well, we've made sure that with all the companies that have merged and our different product supply lines, there's a lot of distributors that owned a certain product line from a manufacturer. Now it got sold to somebody else. But you stay ahead of that. You always have a plan B, C, and D. 2 belts, 2 pairs of suspenders. And in other words, you make sure that if it's something critical, you have one on the shelf. And if you have to get one, you weigh what it's going to cost to not have it. Because when the plant shuts down, it's not like turning off the light switch in your office. It's an act of Congress to get it back up again. So you stay ahead of it.
Mm-hmm. Why has the volume of supply surprises increased so much? I feel like almost every buyer I speak to in the manufacturing space lists this as one of the top 3 issues that they've had to deal with in the last couple of years. Like it seems like it's just completely skyrocketed.
Well, if anything else in free trade, it is going to involve the political result of the world, and with COVID and everything else, you could ball it all up into a great big perfect storm. It gave people an excuse to not go back to work in some cases. It gave people reasons in different parts of the country to maybe move to different parts of the country and say, you know what, I don't want to be a truck driver anymore. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to go to work somewhere else. I'm going to go to work in retail or something. And so the biggest heartache for us is everyone we talk to, all of our suppliers, everything shows up here on a truck eventually. It may get to a certain point in a pipeline, in a rail car, or in some sort of shipping situation, a barge or something. But it comes through the plant gate, at least on the indirect side, on a truck. And that goes to some of the things that were put into place in the last few years that have, caused some people to not want to be a truck driver.
Yeah, transportation is a interesting topic. There was a lot of unrest that's happened in the transportation space in the last year.
Yeah, it's still happening. Yeah, there's still a shortage of truck drivers.
Mm-hmm. So, supply issues have skyrocketed. It's a focus for you. You and your team are doing what you can to get that under control. What are you doing to build good relationships with your suppliers?
Well, most of your suppliers that you've been working with for years, because there's certain things that are OEM, you're going to replace in kind. You're not going to reinvent the wheel. You might upgrade from time to time, but that's usually something suggested by them with new technology or maybe lessons learned from a different customer of theirs. So the relationships are pretty much always there. And when you're in the situation to spend money, they come looking for you to build a relationship. And then you wait and you see if there's a need for that relationship to be built. But I've always learned since I've been on both sides of the desk, you don't burn bridges. People call me and I talk to them for a minute and I explain to them that you cannot possibly do business with us based upon this, or this.
AKA, you haven't done your research.
Right. I had 3 reach outs on LinkedIn since lunch, just to give you an example. Different freight forwarding companies. saying, we want all your business. We have the best freight forwarding company in the world. We can do it better than everybody, cheaper and better and faster. And we own 16 space shuttles, and we can take stuff around the world from that boy. And what they don't realize, most of our product leaves here in a pipeline or in a rail car in our different plant. So homework is not that's called reading the first paragraph of our website. And so you just delete and bless their hearts.
So for the education of our listeners, what does your company do?
We make chemicals and chemicals that make other chemicals. And we make polymers that come from these chemicals, plastic polymers, different grades and styles and sizes. If you have anything made out of plastic in your home, which I can already see, or your clothes, everything, somewhere, somehow down the line, one of the products that made that, chances are it came through one of our plants or one of our products. Do you own a car?
I do. That was a bit of a struggle. I was moved to Austin and looking when it was crazy and the used cars were more than new cars. So it was not easy, but I was able to finally buy a used car.
I remember when I remember you reached out to me and said, hey, I'm getting closer. So that was funny. But yeah, in other words, cars, homes, packaging, those are our big end products.
Okay. Well, thank you for discussing how to deal with supply surprises today, Curtis. Where would you like to send people to find you if they want to chat or learn more about you or your company?
LinkedIn is fine. I check LinkedIn, as you know, several times a day. And they can reach out to me there if they just want to connect and ask me a question. I have no issues with responding.
If you missed anything, you can check out our show notes. You can find us by typing in What the Duck, another supply chain podcast in Google. To have optimal search results, make sure to add another supply chain podcast at the end of your search. To ensure you don't miss a single episode, make sure to follow this podcast and subscribe to us on YouTube. I'm at Sarah Scudder on LinkedIn and at S Scudder on Twitter. This brings us to the end of another episode of What the Duck, another supply chain podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Scudder, and we'll be back next week.